All right. Are we ready to begin? Do we have everybody here, Blake, Wendy?
We're good. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Let's call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Good to see everyone tonight. I'm Neil Goldman, Vice President Clerk of the Weisburn Board of Trustees. Our President, Mr. Mora, was unexpectedly detained and may try to join us later, but in his stead, I will do my best to run the meeting. So to get us started, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
I'll move to adopt.
I'll second.
Thank you. Wendy, do we need a roll call on adopting the agenda?
Yes.
Please do so.
Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. We adopt the agenda. Ms. Wilberg, if you don't mind turning your mic on and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be wonderful.
Of course.
Thank you.
So I know we are at home, but please rise. Thank you. And place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands
one
one nation
under God,
Indivisible.
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you all. We're going to begin our meeting this evening with a special presentation from, I believe, Dr. Silvers regarding our RAP committee and opening the school year as to where we stand and what's happening. So Dr. Silvers, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Goldman. I have to say this was a real team effort, and I think pretty much everyone on the Zoom call here has been integral to this process. I'd also like to thank the community members, the nearly 66 people that were part of this process. And I do want to caution everybody that we don't have answers yet. And I know I feel like I'm repeating myself again and again when I say we just still have a lot more questions and answers. But we certainly want to start looking at a framework to be able to provide input to the community as to what will happen for next year. So with no further ado, I will, Wendy, are you bringing up the
I'll bring it up
slideshow?
for you.
Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. So just wanted to start by, again, thanking the Reopening Advisory Partnership, which we've coined RAP, for their participation in us being able to start gathering information, feedback, advice on what would work for our community as we move into reopening our schools in the fall. I'd also like to give a special thank you to the Talking Teaching Network, Dr. Bill Saunders, Dave Marcelletti, and Kevin McCarthy for their support in this process as well. So we move on to the next slide, we'll kind of go through the process that we undertook. So we look here, this is a overview of what's happened from spring and then to reopening of schools, how we see things laid out in the next several months. So throughout the spring, we engaged stakeholders to solicit input to help us inform decisions about schedules, really important safety measures that we may have to look at. And this was in conjunction with information that we received from the California Department of Education and also from the LA County Department of Health. We wanted to look at what protocols we would need to put in place for the 2021 school year, what would be mandated or directed, and then those things that we could implement in Weisburn just to better protect the health and safety of our students. We wanted to support our sites in closing out the 1920 school year in a safe way as well, which took a lot of planning and time. And I do want to share a special thank you for that to our principals for helping coordinate that, and really, really special thank you to our teaching staff and support staff for standing out and handing materials to students. We gathered, hundreds of instruments and Chromebooks, et cetera, as we closed out the year, and we'll want to thank the team for that. So in early summer, we started and we'll continue to prepare our facilities and our school sites to reopen. That's the one thing that reigns true, is our goal is to reopen in the fall. And so we want to prepare our facilities from a cleanliness standpoint. We want to make sure that we have also the protocols in place to maintain, good sanitization protocols, et cetera. We want to ensure that our operations will support safety, that they're going to support an organized transition to the new school year, and that we're going to be able to ensure that students and their families, at least their students and families, come to school in a safe manner, that we have 6-foot distancing, that we have markings on the ground, and that we're able to practice those protocols with their students when they do come back in the fall. And very important, we know, to our community and to our families, is that we provide timely communication, because we're receiving information what seems like on a daily basis, and so we want to make sure that we're providing information as we gather it. We don't want to over provide information, if that makes sense, but we definitely want to come to a point where we're letting our community know the information that we have. Right now, the key is waiting on the release of the LA Department of Health, their next set of directives or mandates that we're expecting to be released after July 4th. So there was a bit of a delay on that. We were expecting it last week, it didn't come. And so we're waiting until what we think is after July 4th to get those orders from Dr. Farrar. So as we get those, we'll be able to prepare even more. We also know that it's going to be good work that we need to do as we continue working with our WFA and CSEA partners. And that'll happen through the summer, early summer and through the summer. And then late summer, we want to, take a look at what instructional models are available. We'll begin to solidify, what instructional models are available to us for our students, for our staff, for our teachers. And we're going to be really committed to providing professional development on best practices to do distance learning processes or a hybrid process and a face-to-face process, considering the protocols that we need to put in place to do so. And one thing that we don't want to overlook at all is social emotional learning, is the mental well-being of our students as they come back to school after having been gone for several months. So we're definitely going to start working through that. Again, that's ongoing, but late summer we'll definitely be messaging that and working on professional development along those lines. And it's really important for us that we ensure equity and access to all of our students. And we'll be focused on that. And then we have the large bar there at the bottom, which is we're going to reopen schools. So we're really excited about that. So as we gathered stakeholder input over the last, seems like it's probably been a year, but I think it's only been 3 months. But we've spent quite a bit of time, gathering input from stakeholders. And you see here, if we looked at the pie of 100%, 30% of our information was gathered through surveys. We surveyed our students, we surveyed staff, we surveyed families. There was a total of 3 surveys that went out. We had 20% that came through staff informal informational meetings where they were able to communicate questions, concerns, challenges that they may face or perceive to face in the next school year, and we're able to then respond to those as we plan for next year. 50% of the process was the Wiseburn Reopening Advisory Partnership, which from now on I'll just refer to as RAP because it's easier to say that. And we did have 5 meetings for that group of our RAP committee. About 10 hours worth of meeting time there. And if you look there at the bottom, our focus in the first part was distance learning. So I'm going to go back to the surveys. The focus there was on distance learning, how it went, what we would want to see in the future as we reopen schools. And then with the staff informational meeting, it was a lot of information regarding school closure, regarding safety, regarding, again, school reopening. And then for the Wiseburn, the RAP, the focus was strictly on what we would need to reopen schools. And we looked at this as a feasibility study. And so we'll hear that a couple of times throughout this presentation. Is it feasible for us to reopen in the fall? So the RAP committee had 66 members, and I won't read through all of these, but it was an array of stakeholders from principals, administrators, teachers. We had representation from our bargaining units. We have board members. Thank you to Dr. Goldman and Mr. Martinez for being a part of this process. And we had special ed representation, counselors, et cetera, but a total of 66 people with parents. I'm sorry, I didn't want to leave out the parents, but we certainly had a great representation of parents on this team as well. We were very thankful for that input. And when we went through this, the vision of our RAP committee was to work together to support the ongoing health and connectedness of our community and to support our effort to ensure that our students were receiving a high quality instruction that met their needs. And what we focused on here was really the last part was we wanted to ensure high quality instruction that met the needs of our students. And we know that's a community effort. We know that it requires connectedness to our school sites. We know that the teachers and the students' relationship is really, really tantamount to being successful in school and for our students in school. So that was a big focus and our vision. And we looked at these 3 guiding principles, and number 1 on this list was to maximize the safety and health of everyone, to pose as little health risk, as possible to the people that actually venture to our schools on a daily basis. We know we can't eliminate risk. The goal is to mitigate risk and to maximize safety. The second was to build and strengthen positive relationships among students and between students and their teachers as we support academic learning and growth. And that was what we heard a lot from families and from our teachers, was the need for students to see each other, to be able to socialize with each other, for teachers to be able to see students, for students to be able to see teachers, for parents to be able to engage with the teachers. There was this kind of absence of relationship that a lot of us felt as we were sort of thrust into March 13th and then the closure of schools. So we really wanted to build on that and have that as one of our guiding principles or guideposts as we move forward. And then lastly, we wanted to contribute positively to student motivation to engage in learning. And we wanted to make this a priority, is that any face-to-face interaction would help motivate students, would help engage students towards their academic learning and growth. And so the California Department of Education, LACO, et cetera, had looked at three models for reopening of schools, and these are very general. And so you look at a face-to-face model, which is our traditional, in the traditional sense, that's what we kind of know of as school. Students come to school and they have a face-to-face communication with their teachers. They're, in a normal instructional model. Then there's the 100% virtual learning model, which is sort of what we went to at the end of the year. Really, it's what we went to at the end of the year, where students are at home and they're learning virtually via online resources. And then you have distance learning plus, or a hybrid model. And we're calling it distance learning plus, and I'll share a little bit about why we're doing that. What I do want to share, though, is as more information is being released, really this will be kind of carved down to 2, because we know that any face-to-face model is really going to be a hybrid model, because there's likely not going to be an instance in which we're going to have a full-on normal face-to-face environment for students that mimics, say, what we did in September when we opened schools. So some form of hybrid, good, bad, or indifferent will be part of, and what I mean by that is the amount of time that we're able to be on site is going to be the face-to-face part of this. So we'll talk through that a little bit as we move on. So Eileen, did you want to talk to this?
Sure. So in the spirit of equity and access, we have been looking at 2 different models to open the school year for our students and our families. Blake mentioned Distance Learning Plus. That refers to a program that's hybrid. It would offer distance learning plus time with the teacher, face-to-face in a classroom. So in the hybrid model, you have the Weisburn teacher as, of course, the primary educator working with their K through 8 students. I'm sorry, that says K through 5, it should say K through 8. Using our Weisburn adopted curriculum along with an aligned supplemental curriculum. And I want to stop there just for a minute, because we have been looking at several programs that would support our teachers and our students during a hybrid program where kids are learning at home on computers. And when, Blake, I think I'm right on this, at our last RAP meeting, we were able to do a poll with our attendees asking if there was interest in a supplemental program, and 70% of the respondents said that they thought that was something that we should look into. So we have spent a good deal of time.
I think it may have been 98% actually, not to, yeah,
okay,
it was literally, yeah, 100%.
Okay, so we've been looking at about 9 different programs, hearing about them, going to demos and so forth. So we're still on the fence with that, but during my report tonight, I'll share that we are piloting something during our summer program. And from there, we have asynchronous and synchronous learning from online, and then also the classroom instruction. PE and elective courses we are thinking are going to be online. for students in their off time outside of classroom time. The 4 subjects we're thinking would of course happen in classroom with their teachers. And we're going to have to look at data collection and monitoring and assessments differently going forward, and how we are able to monitor student learning and adjust and assess, because as we return to our typical grading processes, we're going to have to really go back and make sure that we are able to work with students and get effective feedback from their work.
Eileen, or Wendy, could you go back to the previous slide just real quick? Just so we have a frame, just so we don't lose track. The plus here, so when we look at distance learning, as I mentioned just when I was sharing this slide, is we know that face-to-face, really, if we erase that from the top, we know that our face-to-face model for next year is going to be some form of distance learning and some form of face-to-face. And so that's where the plus comes in. So just to kind of clarify, the language is distance learning will have an aspect, and anything that we can do aside from distance learning or anything additive to distance learning is the plus part of it. Should it be 3 days a week? Should it be 6 hours a day? Should it be whatever that number is? We believe that's the plus, because that's going to get kids to school. That's going to get them engaged with their peers, engaged with their teacher, engaged in the school community. And so we're looking at that as the plus. So just wanted to point that out as we use this term distance learning plus throughout the this conversation and others.
I have a question. We use the term virtual learning and distance learning. Is that the same thing?
So sometimes it's called online learning versus distance learning. They're not the same. The distance learning has to do with online actually is when you're working with a teacher and online, and virtual would be 100% in your house, not meeting with a teacher in person. So distance learning is having time with the teacher personally, in person.
Okay, all right,
For the
thanks.
basis of, for the purposes of this conversation. Yeah.
Okay, so virtual is when you're on your own.
You're without
You've
the
gotten an
teacher
assignment and now you're doing it.
physically.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Mhm.
thanks.
And Dr. Harbeck and Dr. Silvers, just wanted to clarify something. I'm aware of AB Assembly Bill 77 that's out. Just wanted to clarify that moving forward for next year, due to Assembly Bill 77, there will be, that decision's already been made for us, there will be face-to-face component of education for next year. We are not talking about a model where it's 100% distance learning, correct?
Yeah, so I would answer that 2 ways, Roger. So one is that there will be a pathway for those families who may not feel comfortable sending their students to school. There may be medical conditions for that students have or family members have. So we are going to want to offer a portal for families to have a virtual learning experience, 100% virtual learning experience. It would be an opt-in program, which would allow us to do that, because the parent and the district would then engage in a contract so that we know and the decision was made by the family to do so. But a majority of our students, we're guessing right around, that was the 70%, we're guessing right around 70% will engage in this other model, which is the distance learning plus model, or the hybrid model. And that would be, yes, as per AB 77, which is new, and actually was, this presentation in part was created prior to the passing of AB 77, but would require, and you know, we're happy is going to require students come to school, and that there's going to be in-seat face-to-face interaction, obviously with very, very strict precautions for students to be in class with their teacher and with their peers. Yes.
And Dr. Stewart, one more piggyback on Roger's comment, and we will let you get through this presentation, don't worry, is that for our parents who are listening at home, I think it's maybe relevant to clarify, we are not looking, in part due to AB 77, at a full-time school experience. There's not going to be 100% 5 days a week schooling next year. We don't know what that looks like, but is it fair to say that's a reality for parents, at least to have planning during the week?
I would say it's pretty fair to say that it would be very difficult for us to manage a 5-day, almost impossible, actually, it would be impossible for us to do a 5-day face-to-face, that top box there, or top rectangle there. It would be impossible for that. So we're going to have to kind of find the sweet spot in between a distance learning and some time on site. So yes, for planning purposes, that would be true.
Thank you.
I have another question. Like when you and I were discussing some of the regulations that have been passed related to school and the relationship between the student and the teacher, I believe one of the requirements is that each student have essentially, I'm going to call it FaceTime not to use an application, but the concept that they will have face-to-face communication online or in person.
Yes.
So
there isn't-
face-to-face is not only in person, right? I mean, I'm struggling with these terms, and I want to make sure that we're very clear to people,
Right.
you know, what these terms really mean.
Right. Yes, I understand. Thank you, Joanne. And I feel like I said, I think some of this was obviously pre-AB 77, and that did throw a little bit of a confusion into this. But face-to-face in this regard, and we'll move on and maybe try and use that as a traditional, maybe we would refer to that as a traditional school experience would be that top box. But yes, in a distance learning, or even in a virtual learning scenario, there would be an expectation, as per AB 77, that the teacher and the student would have direct communication on a daily basis that would be significant. And I forget the exact language of it, but it would be a robust communication on a daily basis, either telephonically, video conferencing, some sort of live interaction, not only with teacher, but also with peers. So there's a social aspect that may happen virtually as well, or that would be required to happen as well virtually.
Thank you.
All right, so Wendy, we've already gone over this. We can go to the next one. And Blake covered oh, did we lose that one?
No, it's back.
Sorry. Right, so Blake covered this, but we do want to offer the option of a complete program outside of the classroom for students that cannot attend our schools for whatever reason. And this is just making sure that all students have access to a robust and California standards aligned curriculum. We would always have Weisburn teachers overseeing and working with students in these programs. We would enlist the parents to support, very difficult working at home, a child with a computer, especially for our youngest children, that they would need some support at home, working with our teachers and partnering with them. And then we are looking again at systems that would provide this kind of instruction to students, and that would appeal to all grade levels. So that's been difficult, looking at different types of programs that cover all the standards, that are engaging and yet instructional. But we've tried to narrow it down. We've looked at about 7 different programs. So nothing yet, but we'll come back to you on that. A lot of these programs do offer electives, and we'd have to make sure that students had their PE, the core subjects, and again, they offer chances for data collection and assessment.
So Dr. Harbeck, in the beginning, on the top of this slide, we talk about 6 through 8. In the center of the slide, we talk about K through 8. So
I'm sorry, those were all, we initially thought that we would only go with a virtual program for 6 through 8 because some of them just don't appeal to the younger children. I'm sorry, that's an error. It should say K through 8.
Okay.
We are narrowing it. Thank you for that catch. We are narrowing it down to programs that do appeal to both.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
And part of that confusion too, there is also that with AB 77 and our ability to try and change as much of this as this presentation as we could based on some of the information we had did cause some of that. And we were going to propose that maybe the 6 through 8 model was that there was a more robust virtual opportunity for 6 through 8, and that we would try and find a way to have more of our K through 5 students or TK through 5 students come onto campus, although with a virtual option too. But obviously now we know that we need to have a virtual option K through 8 for our students.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Blake. That's exactly it.
And so when we went through the RAP exercises, again, we called them feasibility exercises, trying to get down to whether or not it would be feasible to bring students back to school. In the first meeting, and I think Nelson shared this at the last one of the last board meetings, was an introduction. It's what do we know now? What have we experienced as a community, from parents, from teachers, from staff members, from what we would probably say a 30,000-foot view as to reopening schools. We were sort of peeling back the onion, if you will. What challenges were we going to face? And frankly, it's a big onion. Every time you think of a different solution, there's other challenges. And so we wanted to have that dialogue. We felt it was an important dialogue. We wanted to gather those notes and then be able to move on with the exercises. So exercise 1, beyond the introduction, exercise 1 dealt with classroom logistics, and it was plain and simple. If you looked at the footprint of a classroom at ANZA, at Cabrillo or at Dana, et cetera, would you be able to fit 12 students at 6 feet distance with furniture in a classroom? I mean, those were the questions we wanted to answer. And how would we do that? How would kids come into the classroom and out of the classroom? So it was moving sort of, when you look at these exercises, from the inside out, from the classroom first. So exercise 2, as we moved out, was school arrival and dismissal. How are we going to bring students into the whole school facility? How are we going to dismiss them? And what were some of the physical issues that that would be at play as we did allow students in and out of school, or as we would bring students in and out of school. And then exercise 3 was a basic weekly schedule, and we're going to see a more better description of that as the principal shares some of their information in a minute. But it was taking a look at what a schedule would look like for a school site and for the individual school sites. And this is where the teams at our various school sites were able to work on worksheets and really hash out what a weekly schedule would look like. And then we were fortunate enough to bring our teaching force back, our teaching team and staff back, to look at a daily schedule for a student, for a teacher, for a single cohort. We wanted to focus on one group of kids so that we had a standard from which to move forward, and that's what we did. So we'll move on and share a little bit more about that in a table. I think. Oh, I'm sorry. So again, when we're looking at Distance Learning Plus here, this is the continuum that we're working with here. So if you look to the far left, you see total distance learning, and I know some districts locally at one point were saying they were going to start with total distance learning, and obviously things have changed as of just a few hours ago with the Assembly bill, and they're going to be sort of going through this process. And then to the far right, you see your total face-to-face, which would be, to clarify, that would be our more traditional setting. Everything in between is some iteration of a period of time that students would be on site. Again, if we look at distance learning, it's distance learning plus. So stage 1 would have a plus. Stage 2 is a little bit more plus. Stage 3, et cetera, et cetera. And as you move down those stages, and we'll share those in a minute, those are the hybrid models that get us closer and closer, or I should say further and further away from distance learning and closer to a more traditional face-to-face setting in the classroom. And so here's, and so bear with the words here, but distance learning plus, and again, we could sort of pick apart and change hours and all that, but just from a very global standpoint, stage 1, in order to follow the 6-foot distancing, we figured each classroom could support 3 cohorts, a third of the student body. You figure 30 students in a classroom, you can get 10 to 12 students in each of our classrooms. So it's about a third of the student population. In our kinder through our TK through 3rd grade, we actually could do half. So that's why we put 8 to 12. We could do a half of those, so 12 students in our earlier grades. But that could be 3 hours a day, 1 day a week. And again, going back to those 3 sort of focus points that we wanted to look at, it was health and safety, making sure that students had some interaction with their teachers, some interaction with peers. Again, this is stage 1, not ideal, but we did form a plan and a footprint to be able to make this work. And we want to remember, again, this is a feasibility plan. So we wanted to see if we had 3 cohorts at each of our school sites, was it feasible that we could operate like this? And the answer for stage 1 was yes, we could do that. And we could do it and provide a safe place for students and mitigate risk. Stage 2, and if you notice, the boldface on each of these stages is the change from the previous stage. So as we look down to stage 2, you go from 3 cohorts now to 2 cohorts. So you're bringing half the students back. Same number of hours, 1 day a week. So you're basically bringing students 2 cohorts in and maximizing expanding the number of students that would be there. Then stage 3, and this is where we really start getting into what we would hope for. We really want to look at stage 3 and 4 as our goal. So if we were to start the school year, stages 3 and 4 would be our goal. 2 cohorts, half the student body, it would be about 13 to 16 students per classroom, 3 hours a day minimum, and that's 2 days per week per cohort. So if you look at that from a theoretical standpoint, you may have cohort A that's on Monday and Tuesday, you would have a cleaning day on Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday could be cohort B. That way you're not intermingling cohorts on a day or even between days, that you have at least a cleaning day in between students that are coming, just so you don't have that. You want to limit the mingling as much as possible in our cohorts. Stage 4 is really where we want to be, and this would be where you have 2 cohorts coming 2 full days per week. The challenge here, of course, is lunch. We have to figure out how to feed, you know, half of our students, how to supervise them, you know, provide lunch and break for our teaching staff, and also, you know, the challenges of keeping, you know, students from mingling, if you will, during lunchtime. I mean, it's a time where kids want to expel their energy, and it's what lunch and recess is for. So this is a big challenge, and I don't want to understate that challenge. And in the interest of safety, I think we'll keep coming back to how do we make sure that we support that. And so as we look into, and then I'll just move. Stage 5 is all students, full day, 2 days per week, and then the next stage is the all students every day of the week. So which is that full face-to-face. And so as we look at this from the totality, from afar, you know, again, our sweet spot is really in that 3 and 4 to start. We'd like to get there, but I want to share with the board is that this gives us the opportunity to move in between these phases pretty easily. And we want to give ourselves a framework to be able to go, if we need to. We're going to be very happy that we planned a stage 1 should things in the community start happening and we need to very much limit students' time on campus. We have a scenario where we could do that. And so, you know, we could easily pivot and go to stage 1 and we could communicate it quickly. We could sort of pivot at the site level with the staff in a way that makes sense. And the same with 2, although 1 and 2, there's such a slight difference, but definitely we can pivot between these 5 stages as needed and as per directives from the LA Department of Health. So just wanted to share that that's why we keep them and again, targeting that stage 3 and 4 as a sweet spot for us.
So I have a question, Blake,
Sure.
Before we go forward, and maybe this is coming up later in the briefing. One of the other big topics we're going over this evening is our budget for next year. And is there an assumption in this list of stages that it's budget agnostic, that each stage can be accommodated within the budget that we have for next year, for the next school year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that's really important too.
Right.
That
Yes.
it won't be limited by, it's not dependent on a particular budget.
Correct.
It's really we're able to make the decision based on, you know, health and well-being and learning and that sort of thing. Good.
Right. Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And the budget does frame it, Joanne. So we know that we have to live within these means, and we'll share where, as we move down, some of the areas that we may have to consider as not being, that we may not have available to us would be because of the budget. We'll share that here in a few minutes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Blake, I have a question
Sure.
with regards to stage 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Did I understand correctly that in those scenarios, the district, we would not provide meals in those stages?
No, I'm sorry, Roger, and I should have clarified that. We would provide meals in all of these. We're mandated to provide meals. It would be a grab and go type meal though. So,
Perfect. Okay.
and part of the deal is 3 hours gives enough time of instruction. Well, we felt it gave a chance for students to come in, have a solid instruction, then they can get their lunch, grab and go. And then it doesn't, and then they're not mingling for lunch at school. So
Right. It wouldn't be served there on campus. It would be a grab and go.
correct, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to turn it over now to Kiana. So I know this is quite a complex reopening schedule, but we wanted to give you an idea of what a middle school reopening stage 1 schedule may look like. So you see the complexity, and Kiana will do a great job, I'm sure better than I could of sharing.
Good evening. Do not be scared away by this. I know it does seem complex. The middle school faces some unique challenges. Just the sheer number of students we're trying to bring back. And of course, the fact that we are departmentalized with our teachers that are credentialed for certain subjects. It did create a fun puzzle for our RAP team. So this is a presentation of stage 1. And as a reminder, that does mean it is 3 cohorts, and each cohort comes to campus 1 day a week for face-to-face time. It was very evident that our RAP team, which was comprised of those parents and teachers, 2 things were really important. From parents and students and teachers, they expressed the fact that the more face-to-face time, whether it was virtually or in person, the better. because we know we need to motivate and keep our students engaged. So synchronous lessons was a priority for us. And then the second thing was a routine. We learned really quickly through distance learning that middle schoolers without any type of structure or routine, it was really hard for them to keep a schedule. So when we go through this, you'll see that we tried our best to maintain a bell schedule for our students that allowed them to have some consistency for them. So this is a sample schedule for stage 1 for we're just saying a cohort A student, and I'll walk you through what that looks like. So at the very top, the learning schedule is broken down again into actual chunks of time that our students would be able to follow. Monday is a live virtual learning day, and this means that our students would actually see every single one of their teachers, all 6 periods, and it would be live virtual synchronous lessons. So we want to start the week really strong with that face-to-face, virtual face-to-face time, but again, provide that structure. So they would have their English, their elective, math, social studies, PE, and science. So all 6 periods on that Monday. On Tuesday for our cohort A student, this would be their on-campus learning day. So we would start with a homeroom. For our student A, they would have math, a math rotation. And you'll notice that there's a break there, a 5-minute break. This is not a break for the students to leave the classroom. In our model, we are actually having the students stay in the classroom and the teachers are traveling so that we don't have sort of cross-contamination and those germs traveling to different classrooms. We're actually changing the middle school model and having the teachers come to the students. So we do need some time there because obviously teachers need to pack up and move classrooms. So for our student, they would have that little break, have a science rotation, a 10-minute recess. Even for our middle school students, we understand the importance of getting up and moving and going outside. The recesses would be staggered. And they would have designated areas so we could maintain that social distancing, but allow our students that time to get outside. It was still really important from the teacher perspective and parent perspective that we embed a recess for them. Our student would come back for an English rotation. Again, another opportunity for a change in teachers, and then have social studies. We do have a grab and go lunch because we are providing that for our students. And then in the afternoon, our student would have time to have office hours with teachers, face-to-face virtually, continue their independent practice or asynchronous instruction or lessons. Wednesday would be a virtual learning day for our student. So his or her first block in the morning would be a live virtual PE lesson. And if they had any type of SPED services, this would be the ideal time that they would be able to do that, whether it was tutorial or speech or anything like that. Their second block of time in the morning would be an elective. For our student, we gave them PLTW in this scenario, so they would have a live PLTW virtual lesson with their teacher. And again, some services built in there. And mimicking the other afternoon, they would continue with office hours, time to meet face-to-face with teachers if they need some small group instruction, and have some independent practice to follow up those lessons. Thursday would be their other virtual learning day. This student, we embedded into our schedule. We wanted to have an actual live virtual social emotional learning lesson every week for them. And we just thought it was really important that we put it in the schedule because we don't want that skipped or missed for our students. So it could be on anxiety, prioritizing, not procrastinating, any of those social emotional lessons that we know our students are struggling with at this time, we would embed at this point. Their second block of time, which would be about an hour, is when we can do some supplemental math practice, whether that's through a program like IXL that we have, Khan Academy, continue to do our independent reading and growing the literacy for our students and accelerated reader. And then again, ending our afternoons with those small group office hours and instruction and asynchronous instruction. And then we are ending our week, our Friday, which would be a similar day to Monday. So our student would have all 6 periods again, live virtual lessons, and see all 6 of their teachers on Friday. So we really wanted to start the week with having the opportunity to see all of your teachers and end the week going into the weekend with seeing all of your teachers live virtually. So Again, this is stage one, but we now know that it is absolutely feasible to get kids onto campus, even with 1,000 students. And I think that was a huge accomplishment for our team to get to, knowing that from here we can always add, and that's our goal, to get more and more face-to-face time with our kids. And that's it.
Kiana, did you do stage 3, 2, 3, 4, 2 for us? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We're working on that. Thank you, Kiana.
Our RAP team is willing
All
to
right.
meet and work on that, so
All right.
we will.
Thank you, Kiana.
That was really well done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Blake, I have one quick comment if we can go back to the previous slide. And
Sure.
Kiana, thank you. Just one point here that I wanted to raise that actually goes to a point that Joanne raised earlier. Do we want to consider, I don't know if it's getting confusing, but if you notice in parentheses, we're indicating live virtual learning day. Is that the proper term, or do we want to refer to it as live distance learning day? Because I think that goes to the point that I think Joanne was raising earlier.
I think we could definitely make sure our vocabulary is aligning there for sure. So we could change that.
Okay.
Thank you, Nelson. I wasn't going to bring that up again, but you're right. I mean, we need, if our parents are going to have any hope of understanding this, as well as the rest of us, we've got to keep our terminology the same. Because if we start interchanging nomenclature, none of us will know what's going on. Yeah, so thank you.
And if it confuses us, we know it's going to confuse our family. So we need to do, so we'll make sure that we vet it, re-vet it, and make sure that we get the nomenclature right. I agree. Thank you, Nelson, Joanne. I appreciate the comment. And this is for, I think Lisa Wilberg is on. Is Lisa, is she on, Eileen?
I'm here.
Hi, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. So this picture is for the elementary school stage 3 reopening plan, and this is consistent across all 3 elementary schools, what you see here in front of you. I just wanted to review kind of what Dr. Silvers had mentioned before when he went through the stages, which is the biggest shifts between what you saw for Kiana's stage 1 and what this is stage 3, is that there are now only 2 cohorts of students. Each is half of our student body. And then the other is students are on campus 2 days a week instead of 1 day a week. So those are the big shifts that you will see here for stage 3. In terms of vocabulary on our schedule, and I agree that we can make it consistent, but just to give you a heads up, we use the terminology on here, asynchronous, which means not live. So it's things that students are clicking on videos, pre-made lessons, and then synchronous, which is live interaction with the teacher. So what you see on here is the plan is to have our first cohort of students, cohort A, come to school on campus Mondays and Tuesdays for 3 hours. And then cohort B would come on Thursday and Friday for 3 hours each day as well. Wednesday was left open, as Dr. Silver said earlier, be synchronous virtual instruction, so live distance learning for the students, but it gives also a break between cohorts for cleaning to take place on our campuses. So that's why the schedule was determined this way. We do have, if you see, like 15 extra minutes in the morning. This is to allow for kind of a staggered entry time for students, because we know that we will need to, first of all, we don't want everyone arriving exactly at the same moment, so that we don't have congregating unnecessarily, and also allow time for teachers to be monitoring those morning safety procedures, hand washing, all of those things that we want to make sure we're allowing time for now in our schedules in the morning. I also wanted to point out that the 3-hour band across the week was one of the priorities that we heard from families in terms of arranging their own schedules and childcare. There was a desire to keep kind of a consistent time throughout the week for core instruction, so that parents didn't, for example, have a student who had a class at 9 a.m. one day and then it was 1 p.m. p.m. the next day, and it was kind of bouncing all over the place. So there was a desire for consistency. The other need that emerged strongly at the elementary school level is the need to make sure that everything we are doing and determining
Lisa, I think we're losing you.
And in helping students.
We may have, I'm sorry. I think we lost her. Kiana, can you interpret that?
Sure. I do think she was saying
Right.
the big need was keeping, and we agreed across all of our
am I back?
schools. Sorry. Oh, you're back? Are you back, Lisa? No. Was keeping the consistency in terms of all of the schools and making sure we weren't giving parents different experiences for the elementary schools, and even including the middle school where we do have that 3-hour band with those core subjects being taught in the morning, and that we even worked as all 4 principals to arrange our staggered start times so that it allowed Dana's start times to be earlier, so that if they needed to pick up a younger sibling later from Cabrillo, that they would do that, because we didn't want to have all of the arrival times at the same time for all of our schools and create just another headache for our families. So we really tried to work as 4 principals together as a team to make sure that we did our best to provide as easy as the schedule as possible for our families, knowing that they are managing so much right now. And that was
Kiana, thank you for stepping in. I was joking about translate. I think that
I could finish for her though.
Thank you for finishing. But
sorry.
Albert, I think Albert and Hugo may be on. I don't know if there's something that you wanted to add, Albert or Hugo, to what Lisa was, unless Lisa's back on. I know
I'm
she got
back.
cut off.
I don't know if you. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add, in addition to working with individuals, we did talk about possibly place siblings in the same cohort across the district, so that a family would have all their children in one cohort rather than multiple cohorts. And that's everything else was covered by Lisa and Kiana.
I'm guessing there's a built-in sort of recess or breaks or something in this 3-hour block as well, right?
Yeah. So we had talked through that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I didn't know you were back. Go for it.
No, and it's a little bit site specific, but when we talked through it, the teachers felt that having a combined snack recess about halfway through the 3 hours was best, and that we would probably want to start it inside the classroom, so as teachers built routines, and then move outside once students kind of used to their PPE, were used to the social distancing, and introduce activities outdoors from there.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we're going to do some, and just to sort of piggyback to on what Lisa just said, is one thing that's clear is that the protocols to bringing students into school and during that time while they're at school is going to be very important. I mean, we know that students are going and staff are going to have to wear masks. I mean, and what those masks look like, we may be able to have masks that have a clear strip across the mouth, so for speech and language practice, for reading, things like that. But the reality is we're going to have students to get used to wearing masks. And I think I speak for probably a lot of people that say it's not the most comfortable thing to do, to wear masks everywhere we go. And so our poor youngest learners and even older students are going to have to learn how to be used, and our teaching staff. I mean, it's going to be definitely a learning curve for them. So that'll all be built into that 15 minutes, and then we'll have to just encourage the use of those masks throughout the school year and throughout the day. So for additional considerations, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dougal, Tanisha.
Hello, everyone. So along with our school age program of just educating our students TK through 8th grade, we also wanted to look at some additional considerations for our families and for our community. So the first one is childcare Monday through Friday during school hours. When students are not with their teacher what sort of childcare would we be looking at for the rest of the students? When we look at a conservative approach of cost, which includes things like a tent or an additional place for students, staffing, ensuring that we have enough staffing in terms of keeping a 10 to 12 student cohort ratio per adult, which has been the guidelines that other childcare providers have been following. Looking at planning, so what sort of lessons and activities would we have for students? Furniture that would be needed, additional tables and chairs and equipment, as well as PPE that we would need for students as well. So when we look at all those costs, it comes out to about $500,000 per site. So with 4 schools, it's a $2 million budgeted item should we want to look at or consider childcare. And this would really just be Monday through Friday during school hours. So that's one of the considerations. Another consideration is EDP and preschool. So up until May, let me rephrase that, from March till May, we had families sign up for extended daycare as well as preschool. And with that, that was a tuition-based program. So that's where parents would pay. And so if we were to look at that, we currently have over 500 families signed up for just the EDP program at the 3 sites. So that's a consideration that we need to take a look at. And finally, preschool. So we have had, with the new preschool site scheduled to open in September, we have over 126 families that have not only enrolled, but completed registration. So they have paid a deposit and are ready to start preschool. And we still have 25 more students on the wait list that we have not been able to accept based on just space. So that is also a consideration. We've had many parents reach out in the last few weeks, especially as to what is our plan for preschool and what is our plan for EDP. And so in the coming weeks, we hope to come back to you with a solid plan in terms of childcare, in terms of extended daycare, as well as preschool. Any questions?
Thanks, Nisha. All right, so just looking again at a timeline in text here, July through August, we know it's going to be big communication push here to the public, obviously to the board, to our teachers, and we also need to look at what we're calling an option application request. Some district, a virtual option application request. Or commitment form, if you will. And that's so that we can determine numbers and logistics, is that we're going to ask families, should they choose to be in a virtual program, what we would call an online program. And we'll get the language right here so that it's clear. But that in a 100% virtual option, that commitment is for, we'd like it to be for a year so that we don't have students going back and forth. Of course, considering the fact that if a student is ill and has to, we can make arrangements, but that we want that commitment to be for a year. Maybe we would make some accommodations for a semester. So we would want to send that notice or request out through July, early August. Then at the 7/16 board meeting, which middle of July, we hope to have our pretty vetted, close to vetted plans for reopening. What will school really look like? We'll have the Department of Health information by then, at least the most updated directives from the Department of Health. And I just want to share that each county has a different Department of Health. So what Orange County may be doing is different than what Los Angeles County is going to do, is different than Ventura. And we're one of 7 counties that's considered a hotspot in the country. So LA County being a hotspot, we're going to have some pretty strict guidelines to reopening. And it's going to be a big challenge and big obstacle for us to open safely. And we want to do that. So we'll have some plans, but again, I say that just with the caveat that things will change from 7/16 or from July 16th to August, 15th. We're going to see some changes in numbers of cases, et cetera, hopefully to the better, but we don't know. And then again, we'll have our pretty solidified plans for EDP and preschool at that point. School schedules will be refined so the parents can at least start making plans. And then we'll be identifying our curriculum resources, supplemental curriculum that we'll be able to provide for our students, not only that are in the hybrid program, but that also would be choosing to be in a fully virtual program. And so I want to thank really the team. I mean, I want to first of all thank the board for being a part of this presentation today. To those that you know, for the questions. If there's any more, there is some time after this to answer any other questions, or if there's any discussion among board members. We certainly have allocated time in this board meeting for that. But I do want to say a huge shout out and thank you to the principals and our teaching staff, our parents who are involved in the RAP committee. It was really important feedback that we received. I want to thank our CSEA partners, WFA, Liza Downer has been incredible through this process, and you know, I just couldn't thank them enough. And so thank you to everybody. And I guess if there's any questions, we take them now.
I do have a question. I stepped out just for a brief moment, so I didn't hear it. If I missed it, my apologies. But I think it might be useful or important for parents to hear some of the principal's discussions on the arrival and dismissal protocols, because that will change under these new plans. I'm not sure that, I think that's important to get them understanding that.
So are you asking specifically what they may be, or just an idea?
Just kind of for example, I guess where I'm going is that not all the pickup and drop off is going to be in the same locations for all students, for example.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I know there was some conversation about staying with your student until cleared. I don't know where that ended, but things that it's just not going to be school starts, and even if it's half a day or 2 days, you don't just drop your child off like you used to. It's going to be a different protocol, and I just wanted parents to be aware of that.
Do any of the principals want to jump in on that?
Sure. This is Albert. Just to give it as an example, we're going to have 3 gates open for drop off and dismissal. So the kinder students would be entering from one gate, 1st through 2nd would be entering from another gate, and 3 through 5 from a 3rd gate. And within each one of those gates, there are staggered start times. So because we're a TK to 5 school, we have 5 staggered start times. So you essentially have 1 to 2 classrooms entering a gate at a time. Now at the gate, the consideration right now is to do a wellness check, if you would. That may change depending on the procedures and protocols that are set by the county. But we will be asking parents to stay with the student if prior to entering the school as we complete the wellness check. Did that help, Dr. Goldman, or was there?
I think so. Thank you.
And so, you know, Dr. Goldman, just so, you know, again, as LA being a hotbed for new cases and obviously one of the challenges being mitigating some of the risk, that will be an ever-changing conversation as we get closer to August. And, you know, should we need to use I mean, I'm just throwing this out here hypothetically, should we need to use 6 entrances and, you know, and be able to split students up, if that makes it safer, we would do that. We've talked about temperature checks as, you know, that came up several times. You know, we are looking at whether that's a valid data point. You know, realistically, is it a valid data point? We don't know, but optically and whether or not you catch a kid that may have a cold or a flu or something, you know, that's a good catch, and we send that student home who may not be feeling well that day. So we're going to try every avenue we can to protect the students that do show up to school.
So I'm guessing that staff will also have the same health checks that the students will have, right?
Yes, and we would ask staff to self-check. There will be a list, a protocol that will be posted or handed out and distributed. We'll have a training for staff as they come back to work. Again, we'll work with WFA on what that looks like and those types of things. But yeah, there will be a well-documented plan as to what everybody should do just to make sure that we're healthy as we come to work, and what we need to do to stay healthy while at work.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Any further questions?
No. Can I just add, you know, I understand, you know, I know there's a lot of questions in the community about this, and I know it's a real hot topic. And I just want to say this is, it's just so counterintuitive that we're waiting so long to produce an answer to something that, you know, we would all love to have an answer to today. And we understand that's a source of frustration, and it is for us, and there's some angst in not knowing. But so I just want to share in that and empathize with everybody that it is counterintuitive that the longer we wait, the closer to the answer we'll get, right? You know, we want to solve it now, but if we can hold off until August, we'll actually have more information to be able to make a better informed decision in the interest of health and safety for all of our students and community.
I really
staff.
want to congratulate you on the stage approach to defining options. I think that really is comprehensible. It is a way of making decisions that are not, that way is not arbitrary. It is defined. Once parents understand what that is, and it really isn't that complicated once you sort of get into it. And I know we'll clean up the language, so that'll help too. But the approach is really well done, and I think it can be described graphically, which is really helpful for people. And I think I really appreciate the work that went into this because it really is useful and it's just well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. All right.
So I guess we will move on. Thank you. Let me echo thanks from Dr. Silvers and Joanne to the principals who are here, to the cabinet, to all the teachers, to the RAP team, to everybody that,
Right.
like you, thanked. Really terrific work. And let me also add, this is a moving target, and there's influencers here, including the various departments of education, the legislature, the governor, that's impacting our ability to make choices, that it's a moving target, and it's really hard. So thank you for the great work everybody has done here, and hang in there. We'll do the best we can to get you information as quickly as we can. With that said, let's move to our next agenda item, which is from the public. Let me read our comments here. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board. The board shall limit the total time for public input to 20 minutes. And let me also add from the Brown Act, it is both inappropriate and not our ability to comment on things that are shared because they're not agendized. So I know it's sometimes frustrating for us and probably you that we can't really comment, but that is by regulation, by law. And with that said, I know we're also going to be picking up where we had some comments that ran over last meeting. And so Wendy, we'll turn it to you to share the comments that have been submitted.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. Yes, at the June 10th board meeting, we had 5 comments that we were not able to read into the record. So I will start with those 5 comments, and we have 2 additional comments for this current board meeting. The first one is from Kenny Morgan. Kenny Morgan is 4 years old. Because that guy is a bad person, because he only wants white people and doesn't want black people, and he made bad choices, I want to go to school named after someone that's kind to all people, and especially to black people. I wish that Peter Burnett was nice, and I wish he treated people really, really nice and didn't use hate. Kenny's sister, Kyla Morgan, who is 7 years old, wrote, "It's important for a school to be named after someone who does kind things. Peter Burnett was a racist, and I don't want to be at a school that's named after someone who was not kind to all people." Anna Bizargo is in 1st grade. Hi, my name is Anna. I have never seen racism, but I learned about it at school and at home. My parents also told me about Peter Burnett, the man whose name is the same as the school I will be going to next. What I heard made me mad and sad. I don't think it's fair that me and my friends should go to a school with his name. Could you please change it? And it would be awesome if it would be a girl that is black, because I want people to know that black people should be treated equally. And I am a girl. Thank you. The next one is Annika Finn. My name is Annika Finn. I'm a 13-year-old girl, and I've lived in Holly Glen most of my life. I'm writing today to request a name change for the Peter Burnett Elementary School. As the first governor of California, Peter Burnett is an important figure in our state's history. However, it is hard for me and so many other people to see past what Peter Burnett did in his time as governor. He was openly racist against Black, Chinese, and Native American people. He has been quoted saying that a war of extermination will continue to be waged between the 2 races until the Indian race becomes extinct, must be expected. He was also involved in the passing of several legislative acts to exclude and limit the rights of people of color, and he openly supported slavery. Our neighborhood and city is diverse and inclusive. Our school should reflect our values and should not be named after a bigoted racist. It tarnishes our reputation as an intelligent, progressive community. Hate has no place in Holly Glen. For this reason, I am requesting a name change for Peter Burnett Elementary School. My younger sisters and I have come up with a list of possible candidates for the name change, if you are open to suggestions. Holly Glen Upper Elementary School. This name is short, descriptive, and it will not offend anybody. Charlotta Bass Elementary. Charlotta Bass was a Los Angeles native and was the first African-American woman to own a newspaper and be nominated for vice president. Ellen Ochoa Elementary School. Ellen Ochoa is an astronaut and was the first Hispanic woman to go to space. She is from Los Angeles as well. If you do not choose one of these candidates for the name change, there are so many other great historic figures who were inspiring leaders and visionaries. Peter Burnett had a backwards, racist way of thinking. He did not understand that love, diversity, and open-mindedness can change the world. Whoever you decide to rename the school after, I implore you to choose someone we can be proud of and who represents our community. Christina Pickert, the time has come. Please rename the school. Alexis Delarme, I'm writing to you to request that the district begin the process of renaming Peter Burnett Elementary School. As a mother and concerned member of the community with 2 children who will eventually attend the school, I am concerned that the school name memorializes a man who advocated for racist policies and violence against Black, Chinese, and Native peoples. Here is an extensive list of citations related to Peter Burnett's time as governor and his advocacy of racist policies at www.aclu.org/sites/goldchains/resources.html. As recent events, including the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless others by police, and the worldwide protests against police brutality remind us, the issue of systemic racism and anti-Black policies in our society and institutions have deep roots and have been too long ignored. While dismantling systemic racism will not happen overnight and will require sustained and unrelenting effort, renaming Peter Burnett Elementary to reflect the values that we want to instill in our children and community would be a step in the right direction. I implore you to please consider renaming the school for a public figure who has advocated for social and racial justice. Thank you for your consideration in this manner. We have 2 new comments. The first one is from Karis Campbell. As a concerned member of this community and parent of 2 children of the district, I echo the eloquently expressed statements of my fellow parents and completely support the renaming of the school. We are a diverse community, one committed to excellence in learning, and I feel passionately that this is an extraordinary opportunity to make a statement that reflects our ever-evolving and diverse community and is an invaluable teaching moment for us as parents and offers a meaningful learning opportunity for our students. Please know that you have the full support of our family as you move forward, and we are happy to offer whatever is needed to make this change a reality. With respect, Karis Campbell, mother of Oliver and Cambria Buckler. The next one is to the Wiseburn Superintendent and Board of Trustees. On Thursday, May 28th, we submitted to you a complaint regarding the extreme noise generated in the Cabrillo School parking lot adjacent to our home. We thank Ms. Wendy Tsubaki for reading it in the minutes of the meeting. The only comment was from Dr. Neil Goldman, who said, "Mr. and Mrs. Webb, thank you for sharing. We will look into this." A month has gone by and we have yet to hear back from the school board. We have been very patient with the school district as the use of the Cabrillo School parking lot is still being used as a playground, and the noise has escalated since schools are now out for the summer. In the last month, rocks and garbage have been hurled into our backyard. At night, firecrackers have been set off in the Cabrillo parking lot. During the day, the wearing of masks and social distancing are rarely practiced. The situation here is becoming far more than aggravating. It's become a safety issue. We need the school board to act on this. No homeowner should have to put up with these conditions. It has been noted that you employ a security guard at Da Vinci. Why not at Cabrillo where it is needed? Respectfully submitted, Dave and Ann Webb.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you to our parents and students who contributed. Again, we're not to comment on these. I will mention, as independently, I've asked the cabinet to look into legal, insurance, financial, fencing, and more options relative to one of the comments, and we'll have more in a future meeting. So thank you for your patience. We understand the issue, and we do hear you. Next, let us move to the public hearing at 8:10. We'll open the hearing for the 2020 district budget. I don't know if Dr. Silvers or Mr. Wilson will be sharing, but I turn it to you.
Yeah, please bear with me. Blake, do you want to start? I'm sorry. Do you have anything to say?
You got it. Go for it.
Okay. Bear with me as I'm required to read the following statement into the public record. Let me share this document with you as well. 1 second. Beginning in the 2015-16 fiscal year, district staff proposed to adopt a budget that includes a combined assigned and unassigned ending fund balance in excess of the minimum reserve for economic uncertainties, REU, must provide the following information at the public hearing for their proposed budget prior to budget adoption. Number one, the minimum REU level required in each year identified in the budget, the amount assigned and unassigned ending fund balance that exceeds the minimum REU in each year, and number three, the reasons for the REU being greater than the minimum. And the minimum required for economic uncertainties is 3%. And so in budget year 2021, you can see the district's unassigned fund balance, funds 01 and 17 is 6.6 or 1,916,334. Like I said, the district's minimum required REU is 3%, and that equates to $867,240. The amount of the reserve exceeding the minimum is 3.6%, or $1,049,093. In budget year 21-22, the district's unassigned fund balance for funds 1 and 17 is 7.1, or $1,968,576. The district's minimum reserve that year is 3%, or $831,960. The reserve exceeding the minimum is 4.1%, or $1,136,616. In budget year 22-23, the district's unassigned fund balance is 3.5%, $969,076. The 3% reserve that year is 3%, $822,210. And then the reserve projected that year exceeding the minimum is only 0.5. That's $146,866. And the reasons why districts carry a reserve greater than the minimum, one is the 3% reserve level, or approximately $867,000, is equivalent to less than 2 weeks of total payroll liabilities. It would not be fiscally prudent to only carry less than 2 weeks of payroll as the district's REU. Number two reason, a higher reserve affords the district the flexibility to absorb unanticipated expenditures without significant disruption to educational programs. The third reason, the district received approximately $450,000 in one-time revenues in 2018-19 and $322,500 in 2019-20 that is not entirely spent. The district is taking a strategic approach to spend these funds wisely over the course of several years. This approach seems more prudent and thoughtful than just rushing to spend one-time revenues in order to bring the reserve levels to the arbitrary minimum level. Number four, a larger reserve provides protection against the volatility of state revenues as evidenced by the COVID-19 pandemic and the state's unexpected projected reduction to LCF revenues by 10% from the 2019 levels. I mean, that's all I have.
Dave, one comment that I wanted to just point out in terms of the document that you just presented is that in order to meet the reserves for the upcoming 2021 year and the subsequent years following, will require significant reduction in budget expenditure. And I think you had that highlighted in the notes section, which means 1.2 million budget cut in 2021 and 1.7 million for the subsequent years, right? So I just want to make sure that's clarified.
That is correct. That I can get further into that as we go over the budget, but that was based on the May revise. Since the May revise, I had to assume some assumptions to create the budget. Those assumptions don't have that much merit anymore, as the governor and the legislature have come to an agreement that they're going to hold harmless 2021 LCFF revenues. But in the out years, if the revenues dip like they were projected to in 2021, we will definitely have to look at budget reductions. But as of now, we're holding harmless for next year, and so I don't know if we'll have to make those as deep or extensive budget reductions as of yet. but that was the assumptions based on May revise. We would have to make giant cuts.
Nelson, just to clarify, I just want to make sure we're answering the question, you know, because I know you you were asking for about the specific number, is that right?
No, are you talking about the question I had asked earlier?
Just right now to Dave, the one that you were asking Dave, is that what you were asking? I was just want to make sure that was the right, that's what you were asking.
He answered it correctly.
Okay.
I'll point out in a separate discussion where I think there may be an inconsistency that I want to make sure that we clarify. Yeah. Thank you.
I want Dave a question, if I may. The 3% is the minimum. I believe as a board, by the way, we should be deciding on a target, because I don't know that we have a target reserve number that I believe we should have. And I'm exceptionally concerned about that number from a couple perspectives, even with AB 77, should it pass. Is my understanding it's very dependent upon federal dollars being contributed there. And in this past year, we've had, at no fault of anybody's, some significant financial hits that happen to all school districts that a 3% reserve would really cause, just seems irresponsible. Your thoughts on that, please.
No, I absolutely agree. 3%, if we weren't able to meet that 3%, the county office would ask us to come up with a fiscal spending plan, a reduction plan. But absolutely, 3% is the bare minimum. It's based on your ADA. Right now, I think the last number that I read, the average elementary school district in the state of California had a reserve level of 16 to 17%. And that's only Fund 1 and 17. So yeah, we're definitely below the average, and we should, as a district, have a target that we want to reach. Just for these uncertainties, it's absolutely helps us weather the storm when something unexpected like COVID-19 hits, where state revenues can be impacted and other programs can encroach on your general fund.
So we're in a very awkward position next year where if we are fully funded, but 2020, 21, 22 looks really challenging, that although we want to be as prudent as we can in not spending money, in spending the money to make sure we meet our needs, but we also want to build our reserves. So I challenge the board, us as a group, we need to come up with a recommendation, the cabinet to a recommendation for us, and maybe even a strategy of how we build our reserves to the appropriate levels that we're targeting, and then mix that with how we do this through the pandemic. I don't know.
Dave, just to follow up on Neil's question, you and I have talked a lot about this in the past about the reserves, and for being a unified school district, but a smaller school district, we would want to have probably a higher reserve than the average district reserve, right? Across the state of California, because we're a smaller district.
I would agree with that, yes.
And we've also had a much higher reserve. I think we've had a pretty healthy reserve in the past of somewhere in the neighborhood between 17 and 19%. Unfortunately, due to this, it's been wiped out. Is that correct as well?
And that higher reserve also included Fund 20, which is the reserve for post-employment benefits. And in the last Great Recession, we had to shift some of that money from Fund 20 into Fund 17 to make sure that we had a nice reserve. So some of those numbers could be inflated in the past that include Fund 20, but the county and the state only look at Fund 1 and Fund 17.
Thank you, Dave, and certainly appreciate those comments, Neil. I think you're absolutely right.
Dave, I have a few comments as well for the public hearing. I know we have a board meeting on Monday, next week on Monday, 7:30 in the morning, to approve a budget that was presented to us, and obviously you have to prepare the budget based on the most and the best available information that you're provided with from the state and the assembly, so that we can factor in all the revenues and the expenses. What was for the public hearing, and also that the budget that would be approved on Monday, you prepared for us a memo and a letter dated June 19th, which is before the deadline that the Wiseburn and all school districts in the state of June 30th has to submit to LACO, the LA County Office of Education. So there's a lot of assumptions in this budget, which is and the determination was based on the May revise, as I understand it correctly, which was the governor's budget or proposal in May that is constantly changing. And as we heard even today, over the last week on Monday, potentially Assembly Bill 77 and the state legislature are going to revise that budget yet again. However, as a district, we're still required and responsible to submit our documents and budget, and our deadline hasn't changed, but theirs has. Theirs keeps moving. And my concern with this is that we don't know what the full budget will look like, yet we have to make certain assertions or validations and required certifications or statements, one of which was from LACO, which is the LA County Office of Education, as I read the memo. It's talking about that the prepared budget for 2021, July 1 budget, that the board has to make a certification or statement that the board understands its fiduciary responsibility to maintain fiscal solvency for the current year and subsequent fiscal years, which includes all those budget cuts. That I think is, well, first off, we take our responsibilities very seriously on the board with regards to looking at budgets and district solvency. That is at the cornerstone of what our responsibility is. However, I find the requirement from LACO to be almost insulting, really egregious, because the state of California and the Assembly still has not given us a budget, and neither has LACO. So, but they're requiring us to make certain certifications, which I think are completely unreasonable. And I would propose that we not make that statement because we don't have a budget, meaning the funding. We don't have the certainty of how much money we're going to receive. And we need to work together with our faculty, with WFA, CSEA, because we're in this situation together, yet only one entity has to make that statement. So I would propose that we add a sentence to that if it's required, because to meet the June 30th deadline, that we would make such a certification as long as it relates to matters in funding that are in the complete control of the Wiseman Unified School District Board. How do we certify a certain expectation for a 3-year projection when we don't know what this year's budget is, much less the next 2 years? So I would be very uncomfortable making that certification without that additional statement. And I'd like that entered for the record since it is a public hearing.
Thank you, Roger. Go ahead, Dave.
We can definitely add that statement to it. And the county requires that because this is one of those, I don't think this ever happened, obviously before. And so they understand that we have to go off the May revise. Never in my experience in school district business has the governor's budget May revise proposal and the legislatures have been so in opposite directions. And so the county, in order to, they see our multi-year projections based on the May revise, they see that we're not going to meet the 3% reserve in the first and second subsequent year. And so they're assuming that the May revise is going to happen. That's going to be approved, voted on. And so they want to see a statement saying that we're going to make the appropriate cuts. And then, we'll do that. And then they give us, after the governor actually signs the budget, the state budget, they give us 45 days to do a material revision, at which we can take back that statement if not necessary. But the county office has to go on some assumptions as well.
Dave, one quick comment in terms of the statement that Roger just made, which I concur with them. In that particular statement, I think there might be an inconsistency in the number. It says that we will implement a 1.2 for the 2021-22 year. I think that should be $1.7 million reduction. I think there's an inconsistency there. If you can just double check.
I'll look into that. I thought it was 21, 22, 1.2, and 22, 23, 1.7, but I'll double check and make that adjustment if necessary.
Yeah, I thought it was 2020, 21, 1.2, and then 1.7 for the outer 2 years. So if you can double check that.
So a point of information, perhaps Dr. Silvers or others can help me here. Do we need to have a motion to add that to our agenda on Monday for the approval of the budget?
Yeah, I would say we did. We do.
Okay, so Roger, do you want to move your addendum and then we'll need a second? You're on mute, Roger.
And just, sorry, Neil, not to cut you off. Wendy, we have that language written. Do you have it noted? I can't hear, you're muted.
You mean Roger's comment?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
We need a motion.
So I'd like to make that motion. Thank you, Neil.
I'd like to second, Neil.
All right. Well, Wendy, can we take that to a vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Kaneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
I'd like to thank Dave and Blake and all the folks who had to do with working on the budget for as we're going forward. I think it's as complicated as the curriculum that we just finished discussing. The amount of changes and the uncertainty of timing and dollars and commitments and just the budget situation right now is so confusing and so rapidly changing. And just as our curriculum planning is in that same sort of state of flux, so is the budget. So I commend you for actually following the trail of the budget changes because it hasn't been real obvious what that trail is and where it's going. And so it's really important that keep going. And I really want to thank you, Dave. And I know you and Blake have worked together with that. And it's got to go together. The curriculum planning that we have has to fit with the budget that we have. And with both of them being unknowns, it's very challenging. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys because it is a labor of, it's like being a detective. It's like playing Clue, right? The budget's in the, in the assembly with the governor. I don't know. Anyway, thank you very much and good work. And we really count on you. We know that you'll do a good job for us and thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Goldman, I can go over my presentation now, or I can do it under my comments, the budget presentation.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Let me share the
Actually,
screen.
we need to close the public hearing. We probably need to close the public hearing. Before we do that, let me echo Joanne's comments. Also, are there any final comments within the public hearing before we close the public hearing? So in light of Joanne's comments about thanking you for the work you've done, in light of AB 77 likely to pass, I want to thank you in advance for having to redo this entirely all over again. Thank you.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
we will close this public hearing at 8:28.
Thank you, Dave. I'm not sure we want to follow that trail that Joanne.
I'm not sure if I want to say my pleasure or not, but
All right, so take it away, Dave, on next step.
is it up? You can see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's our ever-changing budget. Well, based on the May revise, so we based our budget on the May revise. Obviously as it was stated that it's ever-changing. We're up against a timeline by June 30th to approve ours. The governor, and the legislature can change their budget at the 12th hour. So some assumptions have to be made. We have to stick with them, and thankfully we have a 45-day window to change our budget if there are material revisions, which we obviously will do. So here's the timeline of events for budget planning. This year, May 14th, Governor Newsom issued his May revision for the 2021 budget year, which greatly differed from his original budget proposal that he released in January. June 15th, the California legislature presents a budget plan for 2021 to the governor for approval. I wanted to add in here, June 25th, Wiseburn USD Board of Trustees have to hold a public hearing, and we've done that. June 29th, Monday, WUSD Board of Education adopts a tentative budget for 2021. I say tentative because we obviously know it's probably going to change. And then late summer, so I don't know if everybody recalls, but the state of California allowed the income taxes to be postponed, usually paid April 15th, to be postponed till July 15th. And those are personal income taxes and commercial income taxes, which are 2/3 of the state's revenue. And so there's a lot hinging on that July 15th receipt of collections. So we could very likely see, late summer, that they're not able to hold us harmless. The federal funds don't come in, and we could see some very significant mid-year cuts. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. As I just mentioned, 2/3 of the state's general fund revenues come from the PIT, personal income taxes. We talked about the shift in the deadline from April 15th to July 15th, making it very challenging for the state to develop an accurate budget. The governor's May revision assumed that the state will suffer from a $41.2 billion loss in revenue compared to his January estimates. His administration's projecting $9.1 billion loss in 2019-20, and $32.2 billion loss in 2021. And what's compounding this is the issue is that a number of Californians who need additional services like health, welfare benefits, unemployment insurance, et cetera, is bringing the state's total projected shortfall by $54 billion. So not only are they losing revenues, they also have more expenses. I think just like Wiseburn could see, we're potentially losing revenues, but we could have more PPE purchases, more online instruction purchases. So, we're kind of, feeling how the state's feeling, being squeezed at both ends. So based on the May revision, Proposition 98, the levels have decreased significantly from where he was projecting in January. And for the state's adopted budget for the current year, the 18-19 levels was about $78.4 billion in Prop 98. And I should just say Prop 98 is the state's formula to how they fund K through 14 education. So that's Prop 98 funding. His May revision goes up about $300 million. For 1920, he was projecting $81.6 billion. That goes down to $77.4 billion, or a loss of $4.2 billion. And then for the following year, this year's state budget projected we'd have $84 billion to spend in next year. And now his revision, he says $70.5 billion, or a loss of 13.5. So the cumulative of the 3 years, a loss of Prop 98 funding is $17.4 billion, which is pretty significant. So the local control funding formula is the way in which school districts get funding. It represents the majority of their funding. And the May revise suspends the 2.31 COLA and includes an additional reduction for a total cut of 10% to LCFF. So you can see down here, here's your base grant for the current year. You get a 2.31 COLA, which gives you this new 2021 base grant. But then the 10% reduction shows a negative $788. And so if you compare, all these grade spans where they were to where they're projected to go based on the May revision, pretty significant loss in dollars there for us. And then we talked about how different the governor's May revise was from the legislature's original proposal. And you can see here, I'll summarize it. The May revise is projected a 10% reduction to LCFF funding, or $6.5 billion. He was going to proposes to redirect $2.3 billion to CalSTRS and CalPERS, the retirement systems, reducing the employer-paid contributions. So that was actually some cost savings. Going to defer some cash payments to local educational agencies in April, May, and June of 2021 to an unspecified date in the following fiscal year. So that means cash becomes a struggle at the end of next year. He proposed to reduce many categorical programs, and then he proposed one-time investment of $4.4 billion in federal funds to be allocated to school districts that receive concentration funds. And unfortunately, Wiseburn is not one of those districts, so we would have been a big loser in that. On the flip side, the legislature's proposal fully fund LCFF, including the 2.31 COLA, funding all K through 12 categorical programs at their 1920 levels. They did agree with the governor's proposal to redirect $2.3 billion to CalSTRS and CalPERS, reducing the employer-paid contribution. That'd be great news. They also proposed cash payments to LEAs, deferred cash payments to LEAs of $3.4 billion from 2021 to 21-22. no specifics regarding the timing. They propose that if federal funds do not materialize by September 1, an additional $5.3 billion in deferrals would take effect October 1st. So they're really putting the onus on the federal government there. And then they're also proposing a one-time investment of the $4.4 billion in federal funds to be allocated more equally against for all districts, and basing that on the LCFF-based grant. So what that meant, if we had the May revise, that was very challenging times ahead for us. You have structural recession, or structural deficit, a deep recession, loss of COLA, deficit factor of 10%, reduction in state categorical programs. Another thing that we could be facing is declining enrollment. Our people lost their jobs and they're moving out. They're moving in with their parents in a different, town or city. We still have step and column costs that are going to go up. And so we need to find a mitigation plan for our structural deficit. Some good things are the CARES Act. Approximately $1.2 million would be coming to Wiseburn Unified in federal funds. Another good thing that would happen with STRS and PERS contribution would go down. And there's your STRS and PERS rates goes from 17.10 to 16.15. And then PERS actually goes up, not as much as it was going to. It goes from 19.721 to only 20.7, but it was originally going to be 22.68. So a little bit of relief there. They give us a little bit of flexibility in our routine restricted maintenance, how much we have to expend. And that's, our maintenance crews, keeping our facilities in good repair. So we have certain expenses that we have to meet and match in that. And they're going to relax those requirements. With the cash deferrals comes cash flow issues. So in 1920, they're actually deferring the June state money that we get to July. We were able to mitigate that internally by borrowing temporarily from another fund. And then next year we'll transfer that money back to the other fund. And then we're looking at multiple cash deferrals in 2021, half of April to when, and all of May and all of June to when. Is that, July, August, September of the next year? We're not sure. But that definitely poses a big cash struggle for us.
Excuse me, Dave.
And then I just wanted to...
Dave, a question on the CARES Act funding of $1.2 million. Has that been confirmed that we'll be receiving that, or is this, what does that line item represent?
So that was based on the 1.2 was based on them taking the legislature's proposal and funding it more equitable against all districts.
So that's still to be confirmed, though, right?
Still to be confirmed, but I think from the articles, it's still to be confirmed. But from the articles and the information I was hearing, that the governor was more likely to go ahead and give a little bit on that rather than give it to concentration districts, only concentration districts.
Okay.
No, Dave, one more thing, if I may. The deferrals, it also just reinforces, in my mind, the concern I have about our reserves. This is kind of like for all of our families working at a job and saying, well, we're going to pay you in 3 months, but you still got to pay your mortgage, your car payment, feed your family, and just do that out of your savings. Our reserves are savings. This is, the good news if AB 77 happens, but that deferral is problematic, scary.
Absolutely. And if we can't mitigate that internally, we have to look to outside. It's called a tax revenue anticipation note. And those aren't free. It's a cost to borrow money. And so that just impacts the budget as well. But great observation. Yes. So if you don't have that reserve, that savings account, you could find yourself in big trouble.
Thank you.
And then I kind of wanted to get to the nuts and bolts of where I think we're going to end the current fiscal year. So this is the 1920 estimated actuals, what I'm estimating our final numbers are going to be. LCF revenue, $21.7 million. Federal revenue, this is your Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, about 943. Other state revenue, 3.128. And this has some one-time funds that came in. So in the current year, we received about $280,000 in special education preschool grant, and that was for preschool age students that are receiving special ed. So that was good. That was one time though in nature. And then the state did give us at the early outset of COVID-19, about $42,000 from Senate Bill 117 to help us with any unexpected costs due to COVID-19. So in total, our total revenues, just over 29 million, in one-time revenues of just over $322,000. And then I'll get to this other column without one-time in a minute. Certificated salaries, $14.4 million, and 12,000 were one-time in nature. We had an evaluation committee stipend, and that was looking at to revise, refresh how teachers were being evaluated. And so that was a one-time stipend to a number of teachers. Projecting our classified salaries to be 3.9 million, employee benefits, just under $6.7 million, books and supplies, 610,000, 12 of which were one-time in nature. That was for some Dana flexible seating for English language arts, and we bought some backpack hooks at ANZA. Services and other operating expenses, 2.9 million, $262,000 were one-time in nature. That was our remaining LPA contract for the facilities master plan. We had a CDC study. Beginning of the year, we had some one-time costs in the SLC expansion program, and then we did purchase some window safety film at ANZA and Burnett. Our capital outlay was $37,500. Other outgo, these are special ed costs for our regionalized programs and what we contribute to Da Vinci's non-public school costs, $330,000. And here's a big one right here. I wanted to kind of point this out. Interfund transfers out, $493,000 projected. This is the one-time transfers to Fund 63, our child development program, due to, obviously in March, we stopped taking tuition all the way through June. Yeah, we were still paying employees. And so by the time June 30th rolls around, that's about a $493,000 encroachment on our general fund because we can't have the fund balance end in the negative. And so we're hoping that's one time in nature. And so if on paper you see your revenues less your expenses, we actually showed a deficit of $392,000. However, our one-time expenses were greater than our one-time revenues. And so if you took away the one-time things that happened, we'd actually have a small net surplus of about $65,000. That's your true net surplus. Now let's go to the 2021 budget. And again, I want to preface this by saying this is based on the May revise. Obviously, we know this is going to change. So your LCF revenue, this was based on a 10% reduction. So it's going down to 19.9 million. Federal revenue, I projected across the board that 10% would be reduced from the base against federal revenues, other state revenues, and local revenues. Why I say that is because we're just not sure. This was a conservative approach to take. We're not sure what's going to happen with federal revenues. Other state revenues, it's very likely that lottery is going to go down. Our other local revenue, this is Measure CL, a part of Measure CL. Measure CL could certainly go down if people aren't paying their property taxes. It's also income that we receive for renting out our facilities. If we're still social learning, are we renting out our facilities? Most likely not. So I reduced the base by 10%. Now we're going to get some we're projected based on the May revise to get some one-time revenue, about $1.2 million, reflects CARES Act funding that we already know. I think it's 240 that we're pretty sure we're going to get. And then about 980,000 is yet to be determined, the allocation model, like Roger stated. But, I had to go with something. I had to go with some assumption. So I just said I'm going to include it and think we're going to get it all. I'm projecting our certificated salaries are 14.3 million, classified salaries just over 4 million, employee benefits with the cost savings to STRS about 6.6, books and supplies 690, 50,000 are one time in nature. I'm expecting this is maybe due to COVID related purchases, PPE, some additional Chromebooks, services and other operating expenses just over 2.9 million, with 175,000 being one time in nature. And this is a projected cost to purchase some online curriculum. Capital outlay, 15,000, and our special education costs about 330. So on paper, we're showing a deficit of $775,000. The revenue, one-time revenue, actually peaks us up a little bit, but our true operating deficit, if we didn't have those one-time revenues, would be closer to $1.8 million. And that's scary. And so and then I wanted to note, if we don't receive 980 in federal funds, the district will not have sufficient reserves to meet the 3%. And that's in the current year, which is scary.
And Dave, Dave, that was the
Yes.
number that I wanted you to check against the fiscal solvency statement. that 1.7.
Okay. Okay. And then I just want to show you kind of the assumptions that changed from 1920 estimated actuals to the 2021 budget. So in LCFF sources, you see it's going down. The difference is 1.8, and that's the effective deficit factor of 7.92. And the effective deficit factor is after giving you the 2.31 COLA and then taking it down 10%, it's actually a deficit factor of 7.92. Federal revenues, this is a net decrease of the 10% we talked about, plus some ongoing federal funds, plus the one-time in federal funds. Other state revenue, a net decrease to ongoing state funds, and an increase to special ed funding. We're actually projected to receive about $300,000 next year in ongoing special ed funds, which would reduce our contribution from our general fund to our restricted special ed fund. So that's good news. And then other local revenue goes down by about $215,000. That's, again, projected loss of Measure CL funds and a loss of facility rental income. Certificated salaries down by $74,500. That's a net of step and column. And we actually had some savings due to attrition projected. We had some retirements, not replacing some positions. Classified salaries going up about $20,000. That's a net of step and column and some savings due to attrition. Employee benefits projected to go down by about $82,000. That's the net of projected STIR savings, a little bit of PERS increases, and health and welfare contribution for a full year. If you recall, we gave $500 per employee or per employee that's receiving health and welfare benefits effective January. So that's the difference between half a year and a full year was included in there. Books and supplies, about the difference, $80,000. Maybe that's some updated expenditures projections and projected one-time COVID purchases. Our services go down by about $10,000. That's the net of one-time expenditures from 1920. You remember we had quite a bit of one-time expenditures in our services category, plus some 2021 estimated expenditures. And then our capital outlay decreases by $22,000 due to the loss of the one-time SLC futures expansion costs in 1920. So those are the big differences between our estimated actuals and next year's budget. Then I wanted to share, we have some late breaking news
Dave, can you go back? I'm sorry, two slides.
Okay. This one here?
Right here, yes. Under the services and operating expense, the additional $175,000 estimated cost to purchase the online curriculum, is that's for online curriculum? Does that include monies for the pilot that Dr. Harbeck was talking about, that they're currently in the process now for the supplemental instruction that we're looking at? Are we budgeting for that now, or is that completely separate?
If I recall correctly, I think the supplemental or the pilot that we're running now is based in current year now, 1920. And I don't think it was a significant amount of cost as it is in the following year. Dr. Harbeck, if I'm incorrect, could you chime in?
No, the cost is for the pilot is $2,000, and that includes training.
So my question was, if we were to implement the pilot, are we forecasting? Do we have a forecast of cost if we wanted to do that in the 2021 budget? Is that part of the 175?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the 175, Roger. It's a rough estimate depending on the company that we use.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
All right. So as was previously mentioned, we had some movement on Monday. So on June 22nd, Governor Newsom and the legislative leaders announced a budget agreement. And what it does is maintains LCFF at its 1920 levels, so not a cut, nor a COLA. Instead of imposing cuts on LCFF, it relies on K through 12 apportionment deferrals totaling $8.6 billion. If federal funds do not materialize, the first call on new funds materialize, the first call on new funds will restore deferrals above the May revisions $5.4 billion. It also gives us a significant amount of money in learning loss mitigation. And I projected 1.2. It's actually increased to about $1.6 million that we would get. And it has to be, funds have to be spent on 4 general categories: student learning supports, general measures that extend instructional time for students, providing additional core academic support for students who need it, and then providing integrated services that support teaching and learning, such as student and staff technology needs, mental health services, staff professional development, and student nutrition. and receipt of the federal funds are contingent upon the adoption of a learning continuity and attendance plan, which needs to be adopted by the governing board by September 30th. The local control accountability plan, LCAP, is no longer required for 2021. It increases ongoing special education by $545 million. It also agrees that CalSTARS and CalPERS employer pay reduction rates need to go down. The details were not known. It foreclosed the authority of the LEAs to lay off non-management certificated staff from July 1, 2020 to July 1, 2021, and classified staff who hold positions in nutrition, transportation, or custodial services for the following fiscal year. And then, as I discussed, obviously we're going to have a revised budget, and we'll have 45 days from when the governor signs it to have the board approve it. So obviously, there's a lot still changing in Sacramento. It's not the budget's not signed yet. We'll continue to monitor it, and we'll incorporate any changes into our revised budget.
Thank you, Dave. Comments, questions for Dave?
Dr. Goldman, I don't want to overemphasize, but I think I do want to emphasize the impact of deferrals and early indications from ACTS are that deferrals could actually happen February, March, April, May, and June, some of which can be triggered off by federal funds. But I mean, the cash flow is going to be a significant issue. So I know Dave mentioned it, but I just want to certainly share in the concern that cash flow will be a concern for us moving out.
So the good news is this is all just horrifying, but it will be superseded by AB 77, assuming on Tuesday they approve it, correct? As such, Dave, will you come back to us? I guess we need you to come back to us with effectively an updated version of this at our next board meeting.
So Neil, just to clarify, and Dave, let me clarify. I think the first budget, yes, but this late breaking news is actually based on AB 77.
Right, I meant prior to this, but I mean the updates
right.
of the numbers. Yeah.
Yes. And just to remind you again, come July 15th, we're going to get the personal income tax receipts, and that could, there could be another state budget, and early August, September, that reflects a loss in a large amount of that personal income taxes. So we could see another budget later in the summer.
I had a quick comment, Dave. I wanted to just thank you for your presentation. That was well done, very clear. Unfortunately, this is not good news. This is a dismal report. It's going to be a very difficult time for education, unfortunately. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll somehow get through this, and hopefully we can turn this and hear those famous words to the good at some but we'll work through it. Thank you, Dave.
Absolutely. We're not the only district. Every district up and down the state is facing the same scenario. So it's going to be tough rowing, but just like the Great Recession, we got through it as a team, and we'll do it again.
I think you hit the key word there, Dave. I appreciate that as team, because that's really what it is here, is all the different disciplines and the different expertise coming together to understand the piece parts of a plan that has to come together as an entire plan. And it is really challenging. I mean, that's so trite to say, but clearly from the presentations this evening, there's been a lot of thought gone into it already, a lot of good work, and a lot of cooperation and teamwork. So kudos to everybody.
Agreed. Well, thank you, Joanne. Thank you to everybody, to all our stakeholders. Thank you for your flexibility. We all need to work together, and again, together we'll get through this. Let us now move to the information from the board. Mr. Manuelos, why don't you start us off, please?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Goldman. Just wanted to, I have a few comments today. Just first and foremost, I wanted to thank everyone and congratulate everyone for completing a very, very challenging year, school year. So congratulations, everyone. Thank you again to all of our administration, our teachers, our parents, and students for putting up through a very, very difficult and challenging time. So again, thank you for everything that you have done during this year. A couple of other comments I wanted to just briefly state on the RAP committee. I'd like to thank everybody that participated in that, and thank you. There's a lot of stakeholders. It was very encouraging to see such great responses, and already the vision of what the next school year would look like really starting to take shape and take form. I know a lot of people are waiting to see that information, but it's not an easy thing to do. It's not a quick solution. So it is a process that'll get us there. So I wanted to thank everybody that participated in that. And then my final comment was very briefly again on the budget. Where's Dave? I don't see him on the screen. Oh, there he is. I do see Dave. I just wanted to make sure you understood or realized that my comments earlier regarding to the budget were not attributed to you, Dave. They are attributed to more of the uncertainties with regards to the state and the assembly and just the things that we're all dealing with. I do appreciate and understand all the hard work and trust that you put in to the budget and getting us really good reports and working with your staff as well. It's just a very difficult time, a very challenging time, and we all have to look at those numbers, make decisions with the best information that we have. So I wanted to thank you for putting together such a great presentation today. And like you said earlier, Joanne has mentioned several times, we will get through it. And Nelson, I think we've all said it at different points, but thank you for this wonderful team. So thank you. That's all my comments, Dr. Goldman.
Thank you, Roger. Ms. Kaneda.
Thank you. And echoing all the great work, commending folks for the great work that's been done within our district. I wanted to take a moment also to thank the services that have been supporting our communities through a lot of these challenges as well. Our Hawthorne, police department, the Parks and Rec folks that have kept all of our streets and parks clean, the county folks that do the same work for us in the other parts of our district. We take a lot for granted, I think, on a day-to-day basis. And in a time like this, it doesn't feel like we should really be taking anything for granted. And I just wanted to do sort of a public shout out to our community governments also, and thank them for keeping us in good shape. Our streets are clean, our parks are clean, our communities are safe, and I just want to say that I appreciate that too. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate that. And we do need to give thanks. Gratitude is a great way to live, and let's do our best to live into it for sure. Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Well, I have a few comments. First of all, I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank district leadership, the district administration, staff, everybody for making serious adjustments during the last third of the year here. I know it was difficult and challenging, but we got through it, and you made the best of it, given there really was no advance warning, if you will, in this situation. So thank you. I know it's been challenging, but I definitely from the bottom of my heart want to thank everybody here. With that said, too, I would also like to take the opportunity, as both Roger and I think Joanna have echoed, I would like to thank the RAP committee as well. It's comprised of many stakeholders, parents, and so forth. That's what makes our community so strong and our district so strong. It's an inclusive process and a very thoughtful process. And as Roger said, it's challenging, difficult, and frustrating discussions that we're having as we're trying to develop ideas to open up for the fall. But as I mentioned before, and Blake has said this eloquently as well, with that team, we'll take on any challenge. So we'll get through this, and we'll have a successful start to our 2021 year. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the parents. The parents had to make serious adjustments especially for their children. And then even moreover, I think it was difficult for those parents that had their children graduating this year. And a lot of parents got together and tried to do what they could, whether it was, doing a drive-by kind of graduation ceremony, but a lot of parents got together and tried to make some special moments for their children. I certainly thank them for that and doing what they did to help their students that were graduating this year. So, and then just lastly, I want to take this opportunity now here to just wish everyone a really safe and healthy summer. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Nelson. I echo all my colleagues' comments. I usually go on these things, so I'll keep it brief this time. I know that the reopening and the budget have totally commandeered our cabinet's time, and kudos to the work you've done and are continuing to do. I do want to point out that as a result of the quickly agendized item that was mentioned in our comments this week, this meeting and last, I want to compliment the cabinet and the team for quickly relabeling or unlabeling 138th Street School in Holly Glen, and that I know we've asked further action to be taken there as to a committee or further renaming actions, and that is in progress as I understand it. One last thing, especially given the comments from the principals, thank you so much for your coordination about safety, which is one of our core pillars. In fact, it's our first pillar in our mission and our plans. That I want to just encourage everybody, if you would, to be the exemplar for your students and wear masks. For all of us here and potentially watching or listening, I like to think of the CDC suggests these as, if you're wearing a mask, you're doing it for the health and safety of others. And if somebody else is wearing a mask, they're doing it for your health and safety. So I encourage us all to be diligent, be kind, be considerate, and wear a mask. With that said, let's turn to our cabinet and our chief business official, Dave. I know you haven't had much time tonight. So if you do you have anything more you'd like to add?
I think I've said plenty tonight. No more further comments. Thank you.
You never say enough, my friend. From the Director of Student Support Services, Dr. Dugal.
Hello again. Thank you. As we looked at reopening schools and ensuring equity and access for our students, just wanted to give you also an update that we are looking to continue creating a culture of inclusivity for not only our students and our staff, but our community. And with that, we are going to be exploring some training on implicit bias. And I will keep you updated at the next board meeting of how that's going and what our framework and process will be, an ongoing process will be for the coming school year. That's it for me.
Important things to be conscious of and for us all to learn. The Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Dr. Harbeck.
Hi, good evening. We were able to launch our summer program, our summer school program on Monday with 135 students. This is an online program that I am proud that Wiseburn is offering. I know many districts aren't able to do that this year, and we continued making sure that our children were served even during the summer. We have 11 teachers, and all of them stepped up voluntarily to pilot one of the programs we're considering for the fall. This took great flexibility and courage. And just a big thank you to Sarah Nitzos and Susan Castellanos, who have organized all this. We'll be coming back to you with how it went with the pilot, as our teachers are going to fill out a survey, of course, on this. And we're thinking also of asking the parents for a survey on how it went at home. So looking forward to those results.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. I love the
Thank
opportunity
you.
for us to learn from that. That's great. It's a trial run, so terrific. Dr. Silvers, our superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. I would just want to share, and I'll be quick today too. I know I can ramble on a little bit, but I do want to congratulate our entire team, our community, on the end of what, really an atypical school year. And although it ended in a way that was vastly different than I think any of us are used to, I did value and treasure some of the moments that came at the end of this atypical year. There were some really wonderful moments via Zoom meetings that in ways that we were able to celebrate our students that we wouldn't have, or maybe never would have thought we would have been celebrating students in that way. And so I was very thankful. And our colleagues, we were able to see 2 retirements that happened recently. Kathy Waller, who's not here, but we had a drive-through parade or a drive-through recognition. I believe there are 40 or 50 cars that were able to celebrate Kathy, and then probably, and I am going to forget the number, but probably well over 100 that celebrated Dorothy Sweeney after 30 years and kind of took over the streets there of the Holly Glen area. So just wanted to say that there were some very valued moments that I appreciate, and I know it was atypical, but we did. We made it. I also want to say that I heard something today in a meeting with AXA, it's Association of School Administrators, and this term about schools being held harmless has been thrown around quite a bit. And I just want to maybe change the narrative, is that despite changes in legislature, the changes to the budget, and the fact that we're protecting staff, which I think is very important, and we're going to be given funding at the levels of 1920. Schools are not held harmless. There's a lot of there's going to be a lot of challenge moving forward, as we've heard in the budget today, and school districts and LEAs are going to be forced to have to adjust to a budget that wasn't what we thought it was going to be. And there's going to be some really difficult times ahead with cash flow and with cuts to our budget from the state and from the federal government, money that we may not receive. And so it's going to impact our students, it's going to impact our staff, it's going to impact our community. And so I just want, as we start discussing this with the legislature, I think it's really important that we start sharing that, and we continue to share that. Dave mentioned a lot about the budget, and I very much agree with everything he said. We're dealing with a budget that changed so drastically from May, and here we are. So on that note, although we haven't started officially sharing the process that we're going to use to change the name of 138th Street School, or what was formerly known as Peter Burnett, we will do so in the near future, and I know that people are waiting and wanting to hear how that will happen. Frankly, we've been more engaged in trying to understand the budget and also reopening plans, and now it's time to get into that. So we will. We'll send information on how the community can be involved in the naming. And I just want to share too that the naming is not, it's one step in the direction of relooking at practices as a district, and hopefully relooking at practices in a community related to diversity, equity, inclusion. As Dr. Dougal shared earlier, we have other steps to include implicit bias training, continued opportunities for our families and staff to discuss issues around equity, around diversity that directly impact our community. And so we're excited to engage in this work. We think it's important work, and we believe it'll involve some very healthy dialogue and important actions moving forward. So that's my piece on that. I would like to ask quickly, I just want to verify with the board. I believe we discussed the Wiseburn Unified School District residents have 2 spaces or 2 open spots on the Da Vinci board. And as we go through a process of collecting applications, I think it was Roger and Israel that had volunteered or were asked maybe to volunteer to be a part of that committee to vet applications and go through that process. And so I just wanted to clarify that that's accurate. Is that your recollection? Okay. So I will pass that on to Dr. Brand. The second committee was revolving relooking and retooling the Magna Carta, the Wiseburn Unified School District and Da Vinci Facilities Use Agreement and MOU or Magna Carta. Any new revisions that may be needed to those documents, those governing documents. I believe Dr. Goldman had shared that you'd be willing and interested in supporting that cause.
I've only got 30 hours in it. Let's keep it going.
All right, fair enough. Okay. So I'll go ahead and pass that on to, and just know that Dr. Wonder, Matt, and I will do our best to try and make it as easy as possible for everybody.
No worries, all good.
All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Silvers. In light of your comments, and again, thank you for all the presentations from the team on the reopening plan. I would ask that the cabinet consider, this is not one of the stages. However, in your future plans, please look into scenario planning under what circumstances we have to close or alter our plans due to health outbreaks. So I'd ask us to plan that in advance. The worst thing we could do is not have that prepared for, and then we have one of those outbreaks and now we're in the crisis mode. I don't want us to get there. So you've done such a great with this other planning. I'd ask you to put that in the mix, please. All right, let's go to our general items. We have a conversation about RAP, but I don't think, Wendy, we need that at this time. Is your understanding correct? Is that correct?
Blake?
the discussion, we're talking about the discussion item.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, we kind of included that within, it was just a matter of offering an opportunity for anybody on the board to ask questions regarding RAP. I think we pretty much fulfilled that,
All right, fair enough.
unless there's any other questions.
Thank you. So let's move to general items. Item 6.1, approve affiliation agreement with California Southern University. Can we have a motion, please?
You have a motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nelson and Roger. Any questions or comments here? No, Wendy, please, we'll take this to a vote.
Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ayes have it. 6.2, precautionary governing board resolution number 1920.20, declaring indefinite work year, salary compensation, and salary schedules due to state budget crisis. May I have a motion?
Yeah, motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Dr. Silver's comment, please.
Yeah, I mean, I could just clarify that this is just allowing the district to engage. It's a resolution allowing the district to engage in negotiations that may, if furlough days were necessary, if reductions in force were necessary, if reductions in salary were necessary, anything along those lines, it would just give the district the ability to be able to enter into those negotiations with our labor partners.
This is certainly not desired, but a precautionary measure.
Correct, and it was more based on when the May revise was out, and we were looking at more of a 10% reduction with the AB 77. This may be not an issue at this point, maybe a moot point.
Any other comments or questions? Wendy, let's take it to a vote.
Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 6.3, approve memorandum of understanding MOU with CSEA Chapter 486. Motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Roger.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. Any comments or questions here?
None.
Thank you. Wendy, vote please.
Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Facilities, item 7.1, approve 24-month extension to the lease with FKC Company for portable restrooms at Success Learning Center. This is a shared expense with all our partners at SLC. And can I have a motion, please?
You have a motion?
Thank you, Nelson.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. Comments, questions? Wendy, vote please.
Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving to fiscal. Can we get a motion for, I guess we should do these independently. Let's do 8.1, approve agreements with Power School.
You have a motion?
I'll
Dr.
second.
Goldman, I have a quick comment.
Yes, please, Dave.
So the amount listed on the agenda for the analytics shows $7,643. Ms. Nitsos was having some issues in getting this program implemented and was able to get a reduction of just over $4,800. And so the true actual cost is $2,817 for the analytics. So the total cost now has been reduced from $31,570 to $26,744. So thank you, Sarah.
So Sarah, excellent. So obviously, Wendy, please make that amended item. Let's take it to a vote.
Mr. Banuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 8.2, approve contract with Diligent Corporation for board docs software.
Motion.
Thank you, Nelson.
I'll second.
Thank you. I will comment that this price has not gone down. Their features have not improved, and I'm not happy with this software. I don't see an alternative, but I don't understand a software provider that does not upgrade its program and charges more every year. I don't get it.
Blake, could you talk to them about incorporating a calendar?
I'll tell you the specific thing I would like to see them do is make notes discernible, usable, and actually when you print them out, to not have them in random order. I don't know if you've noticed that. They don't even print out in date order. So it's a little thing, but you know, come on. However, I don't see an alternative, and I know it's the best of our options. Other comments?
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, Mr. Ben Willis,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Neil, I was about to vote no just for you, but
Yeah. Oh, well. All right, 8.3, ratify, approve miscellaneous receipts and purchase orders.
I'll move. Motion to approve.
Thank you, Roger.
Second.
Thank you, Joanne. Comments or questions?
None.
Pretty straightforward. Wendy, please.
Mr. Ben Willis,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Moving to consent items. Dr. Silver's an advisory. Is there any reason we can't do many of these, if not all, simultaneously?
But we can do 9.1 to 9.10 together if you choose.
I would so choose if someone will make a motion,
I
please.
would like to motion 9.1 through 9.10.
Thank you.
I'll second. 9.1 through 9.10.
Yes, please. Thank you. Comments or questions on any of 1 through 10? Let's take it to a vote. Wendy, please.
Mr. Ben Willis,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Finally, moving to personnel. I don't see a reason not to vote on or motion 10.1 through 10.6.
I would like to motion 10.1 through 10.6, Neil.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. Comments or questions? Wendy, take it to a vote, please.
Mr. Ben Willis,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Caneda,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
All right. That concludes the voting and agendized items of our meeting. Upcoming dates and events. Dr. Silvers, you want to take us through this, please?
Sure. Wendy, do you want to take us? No, I'm just
I'm
kidding.
ready.
I'm just joking. No. So we do have our Monday meeting, 7:30 a.m. board meeting to consider the budget, adopting the budget. Then we have scheduled. Did we confirm? Wendy, I know. I'm sorry, I didn't follow up with you on this. Everybody was confirmed for a special board workshop Thursday, July 9th, and that would be with LPA for the facilities master planning, kind of final processes of the facilities master plan. Then regular meetings on July 16th and then August 20, regular times. Yeah. And
Yes, Wendy, yes.
Yes, correct.
All right, thanks.
and you know, Dr. Goldman, I will just say things will be sort of coming rapidly, and should we need to add dates, we'll just make sure to send them out.
Sounds good. Any final thoughts or comments from anybody? Well, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our board meeting this evening. Have a great evening, everybody, and be well. And we'll see the rest of you shortly on a closed session on the other side.
How much time, Neil? 10 minutes?
It's 9:19. How about, can we do 9:25? Will that give you enough time or no?
Maybe. I'll do my best.
All right, fair enough. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.